Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for waiting. Now we would like to have keynote speech. The lecturer will be Mr. Yukihiro Matsumoto, chairperson of the executive committee of the Ruby World Conference 2017, and then also chairperson of the Ruby Association. And as everybody knows, he is known throughout the world as a developer of programming language Ruby. Today's title is Ruby After 24 Years by Yukihiro Matsumoto. Thank you, please. I am perhaps not the person at this time. I am dating back to 1993, 24 years ago. I started developing Ruby, and at that time, I graduated from the college, and maybe the second year after joining a company. Originally, programming language was something which I was extremely interested, and I was a senior high school, 16, 17-year-old, and I was wishful to create a programming language, but in 1980s, it was a long time ago, so internet was non-existing yet. So in bookstores, sometimes we can buy a book. I didn't have much money to buy many books I wanted, but anyway, that was the only way to learn about computing or programming language. And I did not really feel I was understanding something, but to acquire a computer to enable me to create a programming language, and you plug in, and then BASIC will start operating. And in my level, actually, it was a far-reaching target.
So I wanted to the programming, but that was just my hope or wishful thinking. But then I went to the university and I started learning about the programming language, and I acquired some knowledge. And after graduation, I got a job, and I acquired programming skill in 1993. And then finally, I started creating the programming language. So when I started creating the programming language, people often ask me that what was your dissatisfaction, or what was my motivation that made me start creating a programming language. So, but many of the programming languages have certain purposes or some dissatisfaction with the current ones, or so there are so many programming languages out there, but my motivation was different. So I just wanted to create a new programming language. I didn't really care much about the other languages. And that was just a purely pursuit of fun. And it wasn't for other people, but it was for me to have fun, to enjoy. So at the time of 1993, the number of users was actually 1. I was the only person who knew that I'm making this. So number of users was 1. And then my colleagues, so I distributed that to my colleagues and shared that with my colleagues. And my colleagues were like, oh, okay, so this is what you are working on. That was their feedback. So only 1 user, and then it grew to like 2 or 3 users. So this was the time for the Ruby development. We encountered so many troubles because there's no user. So it would create no inconvenience if I stop. So motivation-wise, so I wouldn't say it was tough, but sometimes I feel like I was a little bit tired of doing this, so I thought of quitting. sometimes. However, I enjoy the programming work itself, so I just continued by myself. So then Ruby became good enough to be put on the internet. So now we have the internet. So that was 1995. It was December 21st, I believe. So it was over 3 years since I started creating the language. So I worked it on myself for about 3 years, and then I put it on the internet that this is what I created and please use it. So that was the December 1995. And in the world of internet, there are so many programming languages. Most of them back then were personal level. People were doing that as a hobby. And Ruby joined that group. So there were so many programming languages on the internet, but there were not so many users. So people who are using it would get tired and get bored, and then they would be gone after a few years. And people would talk about it. Yeah, I know that we used to have that language before. So in 1995, I put Ruby on the internet. So that was my hobby, and I made it myself. So I thought that I made something good, but I didn't know how the others would feel about it. And like the other programming languages, maybe after several years, users would get bored with it, and I myself could get bored with it. And I thought that maybe 200 users would be good enough. So I put it on the internet, but the response was quite positive, and many people said that they are interested. So I called something called a mailing list. That was the best way to create a community on the internet. I don't think there's so many people who create a mailing list. So now I don't know what would be the alternate for the mailing list, but I created the mailing list, and I published the source code, and then I announced that I made a mailing list, and so please take part if you're interested. So after 2 weeks, 200 people joined the mailing list. So researchers from the corporations or university, people working at university. So those are the kind of people who are using internet back then. But 200 people joined that list in a short time, like 2 weeks. And that was surprising to me, because 200 people after 2 or 3 weeks, and then they say they're interested with programming language Ruby, and there's some giving me some tips or guidance or for ideas for improvements. So that was a open source community started. I didn't expect this to happen, so I thought that I myself would have to continue developing, even though I will have some users. But some people say that they want to work on the development side as well, so they want to help. So people were proactive on the developing side. So that was quite surprising to me. And after 5 years, in 2000, the Pickaxe book. This is the cover. So the book Programming Ruby was published in English. So before there was one book published in Japanese, but in 1999, the object-oriented script language Ruby was published, and it sold quite well. I think we sold a little over than 16,000 copies. So, well, if it's a best-selling book, it would like 1 million copies. But for this kind of a research type of book, if it's over 10,000 copies, it's a very good performance. And then I was told that some overseas publishers are interested in translating my book into English, but back then, English to Japanese translation was pretty frequent, but there was not so many people who have experience in translating the Japanese book into English. So the situation have now might be much better, but back then, when I got the untranslated version, the quality was awful, so I had to make revisions here and there, but the translation project got cancelled because of that. And I thought that, well, it was unavoidable, but the overseas publisher sent me an email, and they said that there is someone who wants to write a book about the Ruby in English. And that was the December 31st in 1999, so it was right before the 2000 year issue. And I was at my family's house, and I received an email, and I said, please go ahead and write it in English. So in the year 2000, Mr. David Thomas and Andrew Hunt. So Mr. David gave a keynote speech in the previous Ruby conference. So I received so many English emails. So this is what it says in the book, but this is the source code, and so why is it this way? So I got so many questions, but back then I wasn't so good at English, so it was really hard for me to reply all the responses. But in the fall this year, the book was published. I think it's a 300 pages long book. So I said okay on December 31st. So they wrote this book in about 6 months. So I was amazed with their power and speed. And this 20,000 or 30,000 copies have been sold, I heard. And the actual number of users exceeded 10,000 people. And in 2001, the very first Ruby conference was held. That was held in Tampa, Florida. So maybe some people know, but in 2001 in Florida, there was an anthrax virus attack. Remember anthrax? So people asked me if I have a death wish to go to Florida back then, but nothing happened. But the attendees were like 32 people or so. So about 16 years ago, that was the size of the conference. And in 2017, we had a Ruby Kaigi in Hiroshima. It was 2 months ago. We had a Ruby Kaigi in Hiroshima in Japan, and we had over 800 people attended. And for today, I haven't do the head count, but I think about 500 people have gathered. So if you look at the number of global users of Ruby, it's hard to imagine, but one theory is that there are over 1 million users worldwide. So in about 24 years, we started with only one user, but now the user number have grown to 1 million. So when I think about that, Ruby has become so popular, and Ruby can be used everywhere. And we started from a very small system. It was a 3-line program, and then it became a software with millions of lines. And it's a very high traffic system for big corporations. So when we think about it, numerous applications have been written in Ruby. So Ruby should not change so much because stability is important for Ruby. Because if we make a difference, that would have a compatibility issue with other systems. because a certain percentage of applications would not work, and it would create such inconvenience around the world. So, from that viewpoint, compatibility is very important. So when for the people who are designing or creating programming languages, there are so many people out there other than myself. So I call them a language designer, including myself. So because I like the sound of the word designer. So for the language designers, they want to make their languages better and they make improvements. So they make Java and they make Ruby, PHP, and all that. But if the design is not very good, it could happen like because of some error in judgment. But sometimes we make an error, and then as a language designer, our language, design language, should be great, and we are tempted to make a revision to make it better. So we try to modify the errors with a newer version. So in the case of Ruby, we upgraded from 1.8 to 1.9, and we fixed some of the design errors, and or to compete with new situations, we made incompatible changes, and there was a version upgrade from Python 2 to Python 3. So there were some changes or improvement made there. But this new version of Ruby 1.9, since its creation, with this Ruby 1.9, some of the software which worked on the previous version did not work. So in order to use that on a newer version, it would the cost burden would occur. So a certain portion of the community, like a 50%, prefer to continue to use the older version. And then what happened is that from developer point of view, we made improvement to a newer version to make it faster or to add some convenient features. But if those people who use the older version cannot benefit from those new improvements, so Ruby 1.8 and 1.9, they're kind of like a division of communities between 1.8 and 1.9. But because users have to pay a certain cost to migrate to 1.9, so it took more than 5 years for the migration from 1.8 to 1.9 to complete. But in the case of Python, the situation was much severe. So like a Red Hat long-term support distribution. So as a tool, Python 2 was used. But once the Python 3 is released, it's been about 12 years. But still, some people use Python 2. Of course, the percentage is getting smaller. But Python community leaders have decided to announce the end of life. That will be 2020. So they still have 3 years. So community have been divided for 15 years. Of course, the people in the Python community were in unfortunate situations. But in the several programming committee, that kind of a newer version, because of those incompatible changes, the community was divided for an extended period of time. That's the unfortunate thing. And when we look at PHP 6, the programming language, so they have decided to introduce so many unique functionalities, but community did not catch up. There's so many new functionalities, and if it's not compatible, we cannot use those functionalities. So the PHP 6 was cancelled as a new version. So PHP 6 did not really made a debut in the world. So the PHP 5, the previous version, or PHP 7, the newer version, are used. So PHP 6, it's like as if the PHP 6 never happened. And also the ECMAScript, so same thing happened for ECMAScript. So there are some adventurous features added for ECMAScript, but there are two challenging. So ECMAScript 4 was also cancelled. And then the newer version, ECMAScript 5 or 6 is under development, so those newer versions are used. So part of the functionality which are supposed to be put on ECMAScript 4 will be introduced in the script 6, and somewhere the developers have to give up on certain ideas. But the language designers would like to make revisions to their language even if there is an incompatibility involved. But by introducing those incompatibility, the community can be divided, and that's not a good thing. So the community itself has become bigger, so it's difficult to handle if the community gets bigger. And OSS community is a weird community, and because there's no reality, it's not real, because there's no real community. We cannot point to something that this is a community, but there are so many people involved. It's like some people would join Ruby community, but at the time they are a member of Python community. So it's like a fuzzy existence. So what is community? I ask this question to myself. So it's a group of people. That's all I can say. And it's a membership. So they don't need any qualification or test. So if people think that they are Ruby users, they can be a part of community. And if you use other language than Ruby, you can be a member of Ruby community and also be a part of the community of other languages. But even if you use Ruby, some people would say that I'm not a member of community. So it's not exclusive. So if you are a member of community, we cannot bind someone. And even if we assume that a certain people are member of community, but we cannot expect loyalty, because we cannot ask someone to follow certain obligations just because they are part of the community. So if we need the Ruby, the technology itself, or the community which surrounding the Ruby or ecosystem has to be an attractive one in order to retain our users. Otherwise, if it's not interesting, community members will go away and move to other communities. And then if the members grew smaller, it would fade away. So just to give an example, OSS community is like a shark, because we have to keep swimming, otherwise we will die. Because the shark can only breathe through the seawater, so OSS cannot stop. Otherwise, it would die. So I think what we have to do is a bit difficult.
Compatibility is extremely important. Therefore, major change should not happen all in once. We have to go gradually. So correct selection must be to do certain things, and other things should not be tackled at that time. But sometimes people speak ill of us saying that Ruby is dead. Sometimes I saw a blog saying this. I was almost crying. So, for instance, Ruby gems have less GitHub stars on GitHub as compared to other languages, but sometimes stars less. And people speak ill of us, saying that the Ruby is dead. Internet comment says Ruby language is my favorite, and some other people say that I don't like them. I don't like it. Recent language, hot language, things which appear recently as compared to them. Ruby is a dynamic language. It's not a static language, and technology has a lot of changes. So language with 20+ year history, some people say that it's an old language. It's already old. In any technology, it is very difficult to keep running at the top runner as a top runner. So anyway, we have to keep listening to these people. So over 20 years of history, we have long history, more history, and then that means more burden, more indebtedness to speak of. So as open source community, for us to keep alive, we have to do something. What to do then? And of course, as I mentioned, maybe we can remake our language to eliminate our bugs, flawless language to speak of, but that could lead us to divide ourselves in the community. So can we keep compatibility and deny our initiative to keep renewing ourselves? So whichever way we do, we still have some problems. So community division should be avoided, but we cannot be afraid of changes. We cannot be afraid of division of our community. But if we proceed in that way, community may shrink. So Ruby could decay. We should. Programming language is a difficult baby to keep. Compatibility has to be kept. At the same time, we have to keep moving forward. If we make a mistake, design mistakes, but we are not given opportunities to fix those bugs. We are human and we make mistakes, but yet we are not given opportunities to correct those mistakes we make. That is the reason designing of these things, programming a language with many users, is a very difficult task. I hope some people are sympathetic to the situation we are in, but that's life. So we have to keep our compatibility, and at the same time, we have to keep making progress. Compatibility is a thing which we have to go deeper. Ruby, softwares with Ruby has to be able to be running in future sometimes. Ruby has certain sense of elevation. Programmers feel or sense in writing Ruby. This is a sort of a difficult thing to express, not quantifiable, but at the same time, we have to maintain the sense of elevation given or driven inside Ruby designer, Ruby engineers to keep moving. This is a very important thing. Keep making a progress. Ruby program has to be Ruby has to run faster. It is very important. Ruby, programming language, as compared to other ones, C++, and other compiling performance-seeking languages, of course, we are slower. So productivity and speed are two things. And people do choose Ruby because of higher performance. But of course, faster running programming language is desired. So actually, even Ruby has to run faster. There are some people who are dissatisfied with Ruby, has to be teased, has to be helped. So we have to have a break-even point sometimes between these two variables, because we end up having a lot of users, and then performance-wise or cost-wise, we cannot support all of these people. And then we have had such cases. Twitter, for instance, is a service in 2004 when it was come to existence. It was Ruby written language. Architecture used at that time, or Ruby architecture 1.8 was used at that time, and it could not satisfy. And the core was based on Scala, Java, rewritten for performance. So in some place, Ruby itself was unable to catch up with the demand of speed. And of course, as far as I'm concerned, early Twitter, unless it was written in Ruby, I don't think Twitter is not as successful as it is today. But if Ruby's performance was faster, and of course we could have faced our issue of break-even point, and then of course Ruby had probably taken a different path. So therefore, it is very important to improve Ruby performance. And also, Ruby has productivity, and people do choose. But this productivity could be pushed further forward so that the programmers benefit, advantage could become larger. I think this is also important. So this is a dream and expectation combined. And so the first 2.4, and then Mirai's version will be based on Ruby 3. This is being developed. So as far as Mirai is concerned, it's a better Ruby, nicer Ruby, but to make not the kind which makes correction of the fault, but compatibility should be kept. This is a very strong orientation on our part. Therefore, in other ways, we need to make it a great programming language. Concretely speaking, higher speed, better performance. So faster running Ruby. Ruby by 3 catchphrase is made. And Ruby should become faster. A project is being progressing. And 3 by 3 means Ruby version 3, which will come in future, will have 3 times faster execution as compared to Ruby 2. It's a difficult target, but unless we say 3 by 3, there is not enough impact. Apollo project, John F. Kennedy was the president of the US, and it was not because it is easy to go to the moon, that's why we go, but it is difficult, that's why we aim to go. It is not simple to make Ruby 3 times faster. It is difficult, but probably or possibly we can make it 3 times faster. That's why we try. So just-in-time compiler JIT, that's what we call a technology that could be accomplished 3 times faster. MJIT is a project, is being in progress, and by this project, Ruby 2.0 as compared as a basis. MJIT is, in terms of one benchmark, 2.48 times, nearly 3 times. This is just a benchmark. It does not mean that it could become faster, 3 times faster, whatever we do. No, that is not the case. But at least we can be wishful. Expectation could be there. So if we improve performance, we could solve problem issues which we did not solve before. So MJIT will be complete within a few years, and then the production ready version will come. Now, furthermore, productivity of Ruby should be improved. This is what we are thinking of. And the important aspect of this productivity is static analysis of software. It's not just a static, but the software analysis will lead to problem of issues. Type inference is something which we have in mind. In the world of Ruby, it's a little technical, but please allow me. In Ruby's world, backsliding, it is flexibility of software can be improved. So it's inference on types, back inference. Inference is to back typing is in the basis of this inference. And in Ruby community, we talk. People say that the interactive typing. So in the running execution, currently will become the basis of the next running. So in software being in development, we make problems, we build bugs, and then we try to identify them, discover them as early as possible. So software development as such, in the past, software was logged, copied, and keep going. But as it becomes more and more interactive process, a compiler error has become more different. This is a part of the communication, and in the code interchangeability. The variable which can be used here will have to do this and that, and then the software, including editor, can teach us that, and then also development environment can teach us that, and then compiler and the editor, user communication takes place so that the information available can be utilized to improve the productivity of software development. And to support that direction, we have Ruby as a tool which will be improved. So what we learned by making Ruby, we learned something. Ruby was not the language which we developed seeking for high speed, but instead we feel good by using Ruby. Productivity becomes good. It is more pliable, more adaptable to changing environment. So even though speed is important, speed is not the first target or goal, but functionality has to be good. But yet it is not just a bunch of lots of functionalities. The biggest objective is that most things which we need and satisfy our needs, and in using it we feel good. It's nice language, and the Ruby delivers things which we feel nice. It's a human-centric sense of using it, accomplishing it. A nice feeling. It's a difficult between English and Japanese, but anyway, Ruby is a nice language. And by being nice, we can bring power.
So for ourselves, when we use Ruby, we would like to be a nice programmers. So compatibility. So if we lose compatibility, software will not work. And this is a very sad thing. And it's not nice. So compatibility is important. So we have to value compatibility. It's not because we are conservative and we are not afraid of changes, because we want to be nice. It's not because we are not willing to make changes, but by keeping compatibility, we can provide a sense of security and move forward. And without compatibility, a part of community will keep using the old versions. And even if we work hard and make investment in technology, those people would not get the benefit. So, of course, it's the best way is to prevent the errors. But even if you make a mistake, if the error is not a devastating error, you should not make corrections just to satisfy yourself, but to place more importance on compatibility. So as a designer, I understand that it's hard to accept a certain errors in their languages, but it's kind of selfish. And most of the Ruby users would not really care if there is a small error. So we have to consider the users. It's not about the pride or sense of dignity for the designers. So, what would be the possible feedback from the Ruby users? So in order to understand that, we need to talk more with the users. So I came to this conference and I also attend the Ruby conference held in other parts of the world. And when I talk with those users, and the actual users of Ruby are using Ruby in a different situations in a different part of the world with different purposes and for different applications. So what do they feel about Ruby? How do they feel about Ruby? And how can we make Ruby better? And they might have some ideas and some tips. So I'm here to learn those things. So people who came to this conference, if you have some complaints about Ruby or some ideas for improvement, or just to share with me how you use Ruby, and I hope you will come and talk to me. So those kind of input are the ones which will help make Ruby better and make Ruby move forward while keeping the compatibility. So it's very important to talk with the users. Well, I don't think in this photo, I don't think there's much conversation going on, but it is important to talk to the users. So in terms of our predictions, so we believe that the Ruby needs more performance, and if the Ruby becomes faster, no one will complain. So we need a faster Ruby. So by advancing the performance, we can continue developing Ruby into a bigger things. So that's why this Ruby 3x3 is a slogan that we use to make improvement to Ruby. And as I said, programming has to be more conversational, and interactive programming should become a more general concept. So for Java, I think it's become quite popular, but I hope that this will become much popular in Ruby's world. So we have a lot of things to be done. So we need to create a tool to support Ruby, we need to improve compiler, and we need to make various efforts to improve the Ruby performance. And also, Ruby is not a closed language, so we need to consider other parts like a development environment. So we know that there are so many things that we have to do, and there are some difficulties we will face. But I'm sure all that would lead to better benefits. So we try to be nice to Ruby community. And also the Ruby itself, we want to make it even nicer. And by being nice, the Ruby becomes far-reaching and benefit more people with its productivity, and Ruby would become more powerful, and Ruby would be more comfortable, and Ruby would be faster. So Ruby community is not just about Ruby, obviously. So not just Ruby, but it's not just about the virtual machine, but gems library which support Ruby. So those libraries also have to have a same kind of nice features. And applications should also be nicer to the users of those apps. So in order to do that, in order to understand what users are looking for, we need your cooperation. And our community is a fuzzy existence, but exchanging information or sharing knowledge or sharing experience, we need a stronger cooperation in our community. And with this cooperation, we can be stronger together. That's what I believe. So in summary, my message is that we want to be nice, and we can be stronger by being nicer. So being nice means that we have to make progress, and we have to move forward to survive, and we have to keep compatibility as much as possible. And whenever we make changes, we should not make a big change at once, but we should make a step-by-step changes, like a gradual changes. And if for certain reasons we have to lose compatibility, but we have to think about the benefit that we can get by losing that compatibility. If that benefit is really large, and that benefit can be enjoyed by everyone, so I think that's also an important aspect, and that benefit has to be very clear. So if someone says that this is just to make it nicer or make it more beautiful, but if we say that this change will make it a 5% faster, or the cost can be 5% less, so those kind of very concrete benefits has to be provided. So in order to survive, we have to move forward. So our goal is Ruby 3, and our policy is to keep compatibility and keep moving forward, and to be faster and to be more productive. So that's the we need such a goal, because in order to make Ruby 3 times faster or to make it more productive, it's not easy, it's challenging. And in terms of the compatibility, we would like to keep compatibility as much as possible, and we should not break compatibility for no reasons. And when we make changes, so when we develop software, it's kind of like a kind of a hustle to make gradual changes. So sometimes you're tempted to make a big change at once, but I think it's not a good very practice. But gradual changes would take longer time to get to the final state. but I think it's worth it. The features which will be added in Ruby 3, as soon as it is complete, it will be introduced to version 2. So you do not have to wait until Ruby 3. So once everything is there, we will put a label of Ruby 3. And we will keep providing benefits to our users. And the bottlenecks are sometimes not in the Ruby, but it could be in the gems or apps. So we need more tools and contributions. So we need to work with a bigger community. And moving forward to survive, keeping compatibility, make gradual changes, and providing clear benefits. So these principles can be applied to anything, not just to make a future Ruby. When we want to create or provide a framework with a new version, these principles can be applied, like moving forward to survive and keeping compatibility, making gradual changes and providing benefits. And when you want to make an upgrade to applications, these principles are also very important. So I've been working on the Ruby for the past 25 years, and what I learned is that when I create a software, these principles can be applied. So that's all I had to say for today. But as I said at the beginning, I started the development in February 1993. So in next year, it will be a 25th anniversary. So in February next year, Ruby will be 25 years old. So we have this campaign of Ruby 25. So in February 24th, Saturday, the event named as Ruby 25 will be held at Shinagawa's Inner City Hall in Tokyo. The details will be on this website. So it's a 25.ruby.or.jp. So if you access this website, currently not so much information, but we will be adding more information like programs and schedules as soon as they are fixed. So we would like to celebrate the Ruby's 25th birthday with you. That's talking about this event. It is held in Tokyo, Japan, and the language of this event will be in Japanese. So we have far more users overseas, so we cannot invite those users to Ruby 25. But in order to avoid that, we haven't fixed the details, but we will use this hashtag to have a kind of a virtual event for Ruby 25. So this is my experience with Ruby, or some memory about Ruby. So we would like to share that with everyone in the world and gather information. That will be done in English. So we would like to look back on the 25 years of Ruby, and also we would like to get the idea about how users feel about the changes that Ruby has been through. And we hope that this event would bring our community together and make it stronger. So this is a good opportunity. So we would like to take this opportunity to make our community stronger and make it more cooperative, I hope. So most of you, I don't think you have witnessed the 25 years of Ruby, but for me, this is a very, I have a very personal passion about the Ruby. So I'm hoping that I can make contributions to make your daily life better. And some people said that Ruby is dead, but Ruby will continue to provide the stability and the joy of programming to everyone in the world. So I hope you will continue to support our activity. Thank you for your attention.
Now, we would like to open the floor for questions and answers. Should you have a question, please raise your hand. Are there any questions, clarifications? Yes, please. Microphone will be brought to you. My name is Sua. I am always feeling comfortable in programming with Ruby. Thank you. Environmental changes, I think, is something which you touched upon, but in future, Ruby will keep changing, and in what field and what products or services you are expecting. Please tell us. One thing, mRuby and mRuby slash is here, but I think Ruby did not reach those small devices, and the Ruby needs more flexibility in future to support them. For instance, recently, machine learning and the computational area, Python is much stronger, but Ruby has comfortableness. And in machine learning, there are overlaps between these two. We'd like to become a sponsor. We'd like to support this motivation initiative. Multiple cloud, multiple processing, and we would like to participate in improving productivity in this area. One more question, please. The person in front, please. Thank you. Ruby's compatibility is the top priority, but we want to do this, we want to include this functionality, but due to compatibility prioritizing, it was not realized. If you have something, I don't think you have many anyway, but would you be kind enough to touch upon? I don't have anything in mind, but right now. I have not said this to my core team, but Ruby 3 keyword. This is the interpreter. Sorry, Matsumoto-san is speaking too fast. I didn't catch the word. Sorry, but anyway, communication has been accomplished. Thank you. Are there any? Today we have senior high school students here in many. Now we have introduced computer and computer programming in education, but 25 years ago, very few people, or almost nobody, was really in this field. 25 years ago, I was not considering myself as a good friend of people in the society. I didn't have friends in programming. I was actually attending alumni meeting a few days ago, and then I saw a friend who said that I had a PC. First encounter with the computer. How did it happen? My father liked things new. He bought a computer saying that I'm going to use it on my job. But actually that became one trigger for me to enter in the field. When we say programming, it means like an engineering field or of study, but This is a very private information, isn't it? But of course, I was an engineering student, but I was not very good at mathematics or algebra. That was true. I mean, this is a confession I'm making right here. So even though you may not be very good or a student, but still you can make programs, excepting some areas excluded. But anyway, rich creativity, imagination, these are the things which you need, I assume, so that we hope that our high school students audience here, I think you can contribute a lot for their future. Thank you very much. I have to express my appreciation to my MC for making a good summary and good connection here. But I think joyfulness, comfortableness, being nice, sense of elevation, these are the things which brings us to the 24th of February 2018, which will be the 25th birthday of Ruby. Thank you.